In the summer of 1097, the First Crusade was well underway. Following their recent victory at the Siege of Nicaea, the Crusader army was marching through the rugged and hostile terrain of Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. The Crusaders were determined to push forward toward their ultimate goal, the holy city of Jerusalem. But they faced not only difficult geography, but also a cunning and formidable enemy, the Seljuk Turks, led by Sultan Kilij Arslan. The Crusader army had split into two main groups to travel more swiftly and manage their supplies better. The vanguard, or lead column, was about 10,000 strong, commanded by the brave and experienced Prince Bohemund of Taranto. This smaller force was tasked with scouting ahead and holding ground. The main body, consisting of around 15,000 Crusaders, trailed behind under leaders such as Godfrey of Bouillon and Raymond of Toulouse. By June 30th, Bohemund's group had reached the area near the old town of Dorylaeum, located on a broad plateau with hills and valleys. Though the Crusaders were weary, they knew that danger lurked nearby. Kilij Arslan, aware of their advance, had gathered a large force of mounted Turkish horse archers, skilled and deadly warriors who had mastered the hit-and-run tactics that made the Anatolian landscape so treacherous for the heavily armed Crusaders. On the morning of July 1st, the smaller Crusader column was marching through a narrow valley near Dorylaeum when disaster suddenly struck. The Seljuk Turks launched a surprise ambush, swarming the Crusaders from all sides with swooping attacks of arrows. The Turks avoided close combat, instead relying on their speed and archery to weaken the Crusader forces. The situation was grave. The Crusaders were vastly outnumbered, with perhaps 30,000 Turkish horsemen against their 10,000 troops. Bohemund quickly ordered his men to form a tight defensive circle. The foot soldiers created a shield wall while the knights prepared to repel any direct charges. Despite their strong position, the Crusaders were pressed hard, and the constant barrage of arrows made it impossible to advance or retreat. The battle dragged on for hours, and casualties mounted on both sides. Around 4,000 Crusaders and 3,000 Turks were lost in the brutal fighting. Realizing that his forces might be overwhelmed, Bohemund sent urgent messengers to the trailing Crusader army for help. These riders risked their lives racing across the hills to summon reinforcements. Meanwhile, the Crusaders in the lead fought bravely, inspired by their faith and the hope that help would arrive. Thankfully, by late afternoon, the sound of hooves echoed over the hills. The main Crusader force, led by Godfrey of Bouillon, Raymond of Toulouse, and other nobles, arrived in full strength. Over 15,000 heavily armored knights charged down from their elevated positions, catching the Turks by surprise. The arrival of fresh troops turned the tide. The Crusaders launched a fierce counterattack, striking the Turks on their flanks and rear. Confused and unable to withstand this new assault, the Turkish forces began to break. What was once a deadly ambush became a chaotic retreat, with many Turks fleeing the battlefield in disarray. The Crusaders captured the Turkish camp and supplies, a much-needed boost after days of hardship. The victory at Dorylaeum was not only a triumph of arms, but also a critical turning point in the First Crusade. It allowed the Crusaders safe passage through Anatolia and crushed the power of Kilij Arslan, who would not seriously challenge them again. More importantly, it lifted the spirits of the Crusaders, proving that they could face and defeat their fierce enemies in unfamiliar lands. The Battle of Dorylaeum highlights many features of medieval warfare: the importance of leadership, the tactical use of terrain, and the resilience of determined soldiers fighting for a cause they believed in. It reminds us how history is shaped not just by grand plans, but by moments of courage and timely support on the battlefield. As the Crusaders continued their journey toward Jerusalem, The memory of this hard-fought victory kept them united and focused on their ultimate mission, setting the stage for the later, famous sieges and battles of the Crusade.